welcome to another episode of the Kitchen Table Historian Podcast. In case you were wondering, we're not a podcast about food. We're going to tell you the stories that your grandma didn't want you to hear. I'm John Brassard Jr., your host and guide, and together we're going to take a stroll along some of the world's less traveled paths. True crime, dark history, the paranormal, ghosts. These things, and sometimes more, are all on the menu. Things are a little jammed up for me lately, so this week's story is going to be a little short. Still, it's everything you've come to expect from this podcast, so I'm sure you won't be disappointed. However, be warned. This is a depressing story that includes infanticide and suicide. If this kind of subject matter upsets you, then you might want to sit this one out. When William Engelberg came to America, he was probably looking for a better life. Born in Russia in 1872, he immigrated to the United States in the late 1880s, possibly seeking escape from persecution for his Jewish faith. He initially landed in New York City, then made his way to Chicago, Illinois. Eventually, he became a professional painting contractor. In 1912, William married an Austrian woman named Molly Krauss. They had a daughter, Eunice, and then, on February 16, 1916, another daughter, Florence. The couple must have been excited. A new baby's always an exciting event. They must have spent months planning and prepping for the new arrival. William might have worked as many extra hours as he could so that he could have some extra money, while Molly carefully prepared their home for the new arrival. As excited as they had been, they must have been equally as devastated when little Florence died about a month and a half later. Their hearts broke as they laid their infant daughter to rest, and then tried to move on as best as they could. But Molly couldn't move on. Molly tried, but she couldn't cope with the loss. In 1916, there was no hotlines to call for depression, and modern psychology was still very much in its infancy. There was no one to go to, no help to find. William probably wanted to help, but he didn't know how. Finally, on June 16, 1916, Molly sat down at home and drank a bottle of poison, ending her own life. Just a few months after the death of his daughter, William had been struck another blow. He must have seemed lost. Sadly, he buried Molly and then tried even harder to move on with his own life. A few years later, William managed to find love again. This time it was a 41-year-old German woman named Sarah Mannheimer. They married, and in 1918, Sarah gave birth to a son, David. While David was strong and healthy, Sarah's health was slow to recover, and she seemed depressed. Everyone must have assumed that it was because she was feeling sick and couldn't look after her son and stepdaughter the way that she wanted to. But it was 1918, and postpartum depression was far from a household name. For the next 3 weeks, William worked to provide for the family while Sarah's sisters, Cora and Bird, who lived with the couple, helped take care of the house and children. On October 3, 1918, Sarah told little Eunice that she was going to take David and have a bath. Eunice probably didn't think too much about it. Later that day, Cora and Bird came home and found Eunice by herself. They asked the young girl where her mother was, and she told her aunts that her mom was taking a bath with the baby. The two women went to the bathroom and knocked on the door. No answer. They knocked again, calling their sister's name. Still no answer. Worried now, Cora and Bird began to throw themselves against the door. Finally, it gave. The women rushed inside. There, in the bathtub, was Sarah and David. Sarah sat upright, the baby on her lap. Both were dead. The women were horrified. Quickly, they called the police. Authorities determined that Sarah must have locked herself in the bathroom, then drowned her son. She then committed suicide by drinking a bottle of iodine. A search of the house revealed that Sarah had left a note. In it, she detailed how she planned to take her own life and to take David with her so that he wouldn't have to bear the burden of his mother's suicide. William must have been heartbroken. Once again, he had to bury a wife and child. In what was a relatively common practice for the time, William sent Eunice to live with her uncle's family, Molly's brother. She would grow up, then eventually marry and have a family of her own. William moved to Texas, where he passed away in 1925. This week, I want to introduce everyone to a new podcast, Scams and Cons. Instead of me droning on about it, I'll let Mr. Jim Grinstead, the proprietor of the podcast, tell you all about it.
So when the scammer uses the hypnotic method of building rapport, then they create dysfunctional, delusional reality.
That's how a scam begins. Convincing the mark that it makes perfect sense to hand over their money to a con artist. The Scams and Cons podcast tells you how scams are run. You'll hear how people are convinced to buy fake art, buy machines that print money, or steal your house.
I get a phone call from my wife, and she let me know that they had decided to move all our stuff out. I could no longer do anything about it except go through an eviction.
And you'll hear it from the experts, people who run the cons.
So we go to your bank, you go in and get $6,000 cash, give us each $3,000, we give you this. You go home, and what you find out is cut up newspaper.
It's fun to know how the trick is done, and that's what Scams and Cons is all about. Listen at scamsandcons.com or wherever fine podcasts are found.